Speed up, Mama. We don't want to lose that picture. Just a few more minutes. As I was saying, you can see I'm doing something personally about the energy crisis and about keeping the American family unit working together. And I'm thinking... Come on, Mama.
Yes,
Come on.
I'm doing it, Jimmy.
I think if you take up the examples we've set, it'll all work out for the better. I love you all, and thank you very much.
Hello and welcome to the Not Ready for Primetime podcast. We're Gary Seath and Brad Robinson.
And you're not.
This week we're talking about Season 2, Episode 22 with host Buck Henry and musical guests Jennifer Warnes and Kenny Vance. This show originally aired on May 21st, 1977. Brad, it's the season finale.
Woof. Made it.
And you're out of breath already.
And I'm done. Thank you. Good night. I got to go. Yes, season finale. We start a new tradition. Buck Henry hosting the finale.
Yes. But we keep with our tradition of having Jon Schneider with us for our Buck Henry episodes. Jon, welcome back.
Yes, so excited to be back with the two of you on this podcast. I've been waiting. It's been, I know I was with you earlier in the season. I'm fortunate that Buck hosts twice a year, so I get to be with you guys at least twice a year. But yeah, I've been really looking forward to this one. Buck number 4 to me is one of the most interesting episodes in SNL history. I'm putting my stamp on it.
All right.
I agree.
I don't know if we're ready to jump right in. Like, I'm coming in hot here, but like I got some interesting takes about this episode.
All right.
Good. Well, Jon has set up. We'll just turn it over to you.
Let me tell you why I think this episode is so interesting. I believe in my heart, this is the last episode of the original version of Saturday Night Live.
I agree.
So that is why this is such a monumental episode for people to go and check out. From this point forward, beginning in season 3, they get a ton of new budget. So they have new home base set. Their staging is different. Their costuming is different. I believe they add a ton of departments. The writers, they still play extras, but now they have hired extras. It's a completely different show. I believe the cast, their stardom elevates tremendously. They're going off. They're filming other projects. It is like when you come back for whenever you guys kick off season 3, you are watching a different show, despite it still being the original era. So this to me is a monumental moment in SNL history.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, Jon. And that's all. Thanks, everybody. Good night. We'll see you next week. That was, no, you summarized that perfectly. This is the end of what was the original show.
Yeah, you really feel it. I felt it at the end, when the last sketch, and they do the good nights, and you have this sense of nod back to the original era, to season 1, but you definitely feel and like there's a change, and when they come back, it's a bit of a different show.
And I have to say, I guess we'll get into it when it comes, to this time in the episode. But even having Chevy Chase back in the building for this, I know he's never really left, but just having him there to me is like another bookend on this original era of the show.
Exactly.
And really, when you think about it, wrapping up this 2-season run with Buck Henry is kind of the perfect host, as someone who plays really well with the entire cast. They're all very comfortable with him. He's very comfortable with them. And they all just kind of have this familiarity with one another. So no one's hesitant or afraid to do anything outside of their comfort zone.
And he'll elevate. Remember our last episode we had with Buck Henry? A lot of the material wasn't that great, but he could still elevate. So, it's the end of the season. It's a long season. Remember, they had to come back in the summertime, so they didn't have that much time off. Like, the cast and writers are tired and exhausted. To finish the season with somebody like Buck, who you guys can come in and you don't worry about anything. I think it's, there's a reason why every season after this season, they end with Buck. It's all, the foundation is all laid tonight.
All right, let's just get into it then. Our cold open starts with a fireside chat. So we open on the graphic of the White House, and then we go in and see President Carter pedaling on a stationary bike. And he tells us that it's to generate the power for the broadcast, which gets a huge applause from the audience right off the bat. And he talks about, doing his part and pitching in. And then he switches with Rosalind, who's played by Lorraine. and we see his mother in the background. And Rosalind now is pedaling the bike and keeping the broadcast going, thankfully. And then she turns it over to Lillian Carter.
They do a great bit every time they switch bicyclists where the screen starts to fuzz out a little bit, like they're losing power and they start to lose image. And I like, it was a good touch.
Yeah, it was great. And Dan, as President Carter's like, oh, get back on there. We got to keep this broadcast going. And he does. And then Lorraine switches out with Gilda as Jimmy Carter's mother, Lillian, has to get on the bike and pedal to keep it going. And she has problems getting on. So like you said, Brad, picture starts to get really fuzzy and kind of go away. And then she gets on and starts pedaling. And then Lillian Carter starts to feel faint and eventually falls off the bike. We get that fuzziness, takes everything down. They get her back up. And then Jimmy and Rosalind Carter go away. So it's just Gilda as Lillian. And she then is pedaling her heart out and then throws to Live from New York. And that's our cold open for this sketch. John, how did you feel about this one?
I love this. I have to assume that, this is like an early Jim Downey piece because just the way it was written so beautifully, it's very creative. My first instinct was really like, they don't make cold opens like this anymore, where you take a concept that's happening and you make it super creative and involve it, through the lens of Saturday Night Live. And I felt like a few things were really key here to make this work. One, Dan Aykroyd's Jimmy Carter really coming into its own. I think it is clearly a pretty weak impression at first, especially when he's going head to head with Chevy. And now I feel like he has a take on it and he's able to anchor a sketch with it much better than he was in the second half of the season. And the choice to have Gilda play Lillian Carter, I think for me was so good. I mean, she's so good, great at getting into character. Like, this is to me is like why she's the top 10 cast member of all time. It's just that she could like pull off these characterizations so well. Where
her physical comedy, yet again,
it's
her
physical
comedy is amazing.
But she brings out emotion in what she does. Like, you almost want to feel bad for her.
Right. Yes. You see her as this old doddering woman and they're like, get on the bike, mom, and do this. And the way she plays it, you feel like she's an old lady. Brad, how did you feel?
Yeah, it's goofy. It's funny. I thought, Gilda's physical comedy was, again, amazing to watch. The only thing, John, you're a big Dan fan. There was something about me, though. I kind of wish almost they would have let Dan give the Live from New York, because we haven't seen him do one yet solo. And I was kind of like, give Dan the shot. But, it did feel right going back to Gilda, and she's been doing them a lot this season, so it made sense. But it was kind of the only one thing I was like, maybe if Dan would have done it. But it was a fun sketch. It was really good. Yeah,
I guess the only times he had done it prior to this were the group ones, like with Fran Tarkenton and Sissy Spacek. But yeah, I mean, he's going to get his opportunity. But I agree. That could have been fun.
I think this cold open was great, and it set us up for feeling really good going into this show. You had that high energy, like, and I think to your point, John, Dan's President Carter's really coming into its own here, and he's got it down now where you want to see him playing Carter. Even if he's playing Jimmy Carter while having a full-on mustache, that's fine.
I think a lot of that does have to do with Downey, because one of the things I liked about this sketch too, this is now the second time where it's not just Dan doing a riff, like having fun. They're actually trying to say something. Like this time they're talking about Carter and his energy policy. So they're actually getting into Carter a little bit, which they did last time with Julian Bond. So they're actually digging deeper. Dan's impressions are coming out better because I think he's got more to work with. He's got more meat on the bone now.
It did feel like Downey, and it was one of those sketches where I felt like, I wish I knew more of the intricacies of 1977 politics, so I got more of these jokes because I knew they were in there, and I didn't personally know them all. So, but great start to the show. Again, we go to the opening credits. Nothing of note except they introduce Impressionist Michael O'Donoghue again.
Impressionist.
And then for the monologue, Buck comes out onto the set and we see a cot, and what at first I thought was a coat rack, and then I realized like,
I didn't know what that was.
That's not a coat rack. And Buck comes out to say that NBC and Lorne told him that he could do whatever he wants. So he wants to base the show on pornography, like 42nd Street in Manhattan at the time. And then I realize as he walks over to what I thought was a coat rack and pulls off a whip, it's not a coat rack, or it's a funny place to hold your whip. And he unfolds the bed and has a vat of cottage cheese, and he proposes performing a live sex act with someone in the audience. And he asks Lorne, who comes over the mic and says, okay, go ahead. And Buck has this great surprise look on his face.
He's like daring Lauren and NBC that there's no way they'll let him do it. And Lauren's like, go ahead, Buck. No, they're good. Go for it. And you just see Buck like, okay.
So then he says, fine, I'm going to pick someone from the audience. And we see the camera pan over the audience. We see a nun. And he says, no, not you, sister. And finally, there's this beautiful woman. And Buck is excited about her. And he's like, yes, you there. And instead, what we see is the audience is this giant, very muscular guy next to her in a tank top gets up and runs down. And then Buck is surprised as this guy ends up on stage and throws Buck onto the cot. And that's our monologue. Something different, which I know you love, Brad. How did you feel about this?
It was different. It was, you know what? I don't know. I like how Buck kind of like offhandedly referenced, you know, how many times he was there. It's like, oh, I've been here a few times. Plays it off. You know, it was fine. Yeah, Buck always does something different, so it's enjoyable watching his monologue. You never know what you're going to get. So, you know, for that, I liked it.
John, how'd you feel about this?
I love horny Buck. I think it's great.
This episode I kind of forgot horny Buck existed. Like I forgot the sexual side of Buck Henry, and it comes out this episode a lot. There's many times this episode I was like, I forgot about that.
Oh, you just wait. We're going to be having some interesting discussions moving forward about Buck Henry. I mean, I do like this. You know, I have to say, first member of the 4-timers club here, Buck Henry, as we get. This to me is a really fun, different monologue, and I can understand when you have a back half of the season with a lot of hosts that are not necessarily so comfortable on the stage, to have a guy out there who's just fully embracing the madness and able to, you know, basically they embrace, like, do whatever you want, Buck. I really love that, like, they're fully embracing Buck as a host that's willing to do anything. I think on the podcast we've talked before about how they're willing to give him sketches, or he's willing to do sketches that other hosts aren't willing to do. And I think that is a trait that you see in every Buck episode. So to me, this is like symbolic of the type of host that he is. And I again think this is a very funny way to kick off the show.
And if nothing else, he's comfortable. You know, with the exception of Elliot Gould and Eric Idle, we haven't seen hosts come on stage, do the monologue, and be comfortable. Like they're either doing a very like pre-written bit, or they're very stiff, or they're nervous. And it's just one of these rare instances, especially this season with the host we've had, just to see somebody come up and own it and be completely comfortable in the environment. And you just know we're in for a good ride.
It just, to me, it epitomizes fearless Buck. He's just like, all right, we're going to do this. And we're going to do this silly thing where I say I'm going to perform a live sex act with cottage cheese.
What do you think he was doing with the cottage cheese?
I many different ideas. I'm not sure.
If you're listening, let us know.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of his look when he's like, I have this vat of cottage cheese. I had no plans for this. I just told him to bring it out.
Yeah.
Now I have to think of something to do. Other than reference it in the next sketch, of course.
Exactly. Our next sketch starts with college music. I can't think of the name of that song, but it clearly lets you know that this is a college setting. And we see Gilda telling Garrett that the dean is running late because he's performing a live sex act. So call back right away to what we just saw. And then Buck enters and references, like you said, Brad, that he was just finishing up with cottage cheese. So Garrett and Buck now are having this conversation. And Garrett, who, according to Buck, is named Keith, but Garrett swears his name is Jamal multiple times. Garrett's making demands of the dean, which the dean refutes because he's been making these demands for 5 years. And they go back and forth on Garrett's group taking over the administration building. And then the dean says, well, you haven't realized that we've built an entirely new building right behind you where you've been taking over. And then he summarily dismisses Keith and or Jamal, whatever you want to call him. And I thought, well, that's a weird sketch.
Yeah. What was my first thought too is, what was that all about?
It took us a long time to get there, and I wasn't exactly sure where we were going.
And my big worry at this point, I was like, because it's the season finale, I'm like, is this the only time we see Garrett? I was legitimately worried they put this piece in because Garrett had nothing to do for the rest of the episode, and it was the last episode of the season, and they like forced this piece in.
Right.
Because other than that, like you said, he leaves, and then we get to the real sketch.
And then the real sketch starts with the dean is now on the phone with his wife. He gets a call from his wife, and he sets the whole thing up by saying, oh, I have to tell this kid he's not going to graduate. And he's very excited about it. And he said, I don't know who this is. It's some big man on campus. And then we get Jon comes into the door as the samurai, and we get Don Pardo telling us that it's another episode of Samurai BMOC, Big Man on Campus.
I thought this could be fun. I was excited. I was legitimately excited. I was like, okay, Jon as Jon playing Big Man on Campus. It's a good fit. This could actually be pretty funny.
Yeah, so Jon comes on as the samurai, and the dean tells him he can't graduate because of his grades in spite of all of these extracurricular activities that the samurai has done. They then discuss the classes that he's failed, including Asian studies, and he chops the globe and shows him where Asia is. And they talk about the one class he's passed and how hard it is, and it's because the samurai's been sleeping with the teacher. Then it turns out that the two of them are fraternity brothers, and the dean agrees to let him graduate. That's a very quick summary of what this very long sketch was.
Was it?
Yes, it was a lot quicker than the sketch was. I can guarantee that. John, how did you feel about this samurai sketch?
This one was okay to me. I did like the connection with Belushi, Big Man on Campus, and then my thought instantly goes to Animal House, which he's going to film in a few months. And so like for me, like the part played well. I do like that he was, it was the samurai as a student here versus like another type of shop owner or something like that, or like a professional that we usually get. So I like how this one actually feels a lot different than the ones we definitely seen so far. I think they're going to get a little creative at some point down the road with putting it in different settings. But for now, I liked how different it felt. And I think that's why this works for me. I have to wonder if you showed this sketch like on its own to somebody as a first samurai sketch, if they would find this funny. But I think like in the context of the other ones, I think this one is different enough that I was able to enjoy some of the gags here. But again, the continuity between Buck Henry from the monologue to now is like, I'm a sucker for stuff like that. The Garrett part, I would have like thrown that script out because that was bizarre.
Yeah.
But besides that, This felt like you had to do it, and I like that because it's Buck Henry and he always does a samurai, but I like that they just went in a different direction than it normally would have.
Yeah, it totally works. It's silly and fun. Aside from the weird attempted political bit with Garrett in the opening, it was fun. And I think you're right. I think you do need to have seen these sketches before to really appreciate it, because I feel like they kind of, I don't know how to really explain it, but they ease into the back and forth of Jon and Buck, where I feel like in the earlier ones, like they really lay the groundwork and the foundation of like, Buck understanding what he's saying. And by now you believe it because we've seen it so many times. So like watching them do their thing at the desk where they're talking, I liked, Jon brought in the apple, polishes the apple on his robe, puts it on his desk. And, Buck is great at coming back to the samurai with phrases, Jon's making up, he's trying to give excuses, and Buck goes, I know you had mono. That's no excuse. Right. Like not missing a beat, like right in the conversation. And then the end is just silly. Oh, you're in a fraternity? I was in that fraternity. And it gives Jon the excuse to take the sword and hack away at the roll up blinds on the window. And then he pulls it down and shows the letter. And it's like, I was in the fraternity. You were. And they both do the chant, and Buck's doing it in English and Jon's doing it in gibberish. It's just like, and it gives him then he takes the pillow and chops it up and, makes the hat, the graduation cap. So it's all silly and fun. It's all good.
What's interesting about these sketches as I'm getting to rewatch them through your podcast and being on with you is like, I think the samurai sketches may be the only popular recurring sketch in SNL history where the characters stay the same, but they don't remember each other from sketch to sketch. So there's no continuity.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's really fascinating. Like we're we're going to talk about the Coneheads coming up. And I love continuity. And I think that's something that this era is going to do really well, with the Olympia Cafe sketches and the nerd sketches like that. They build on continuity. So it is always really interesting for me to look back at this, like one of the first recurring characters in the history of the show, that they built on the fact that there is literally no continuity between the first sketch and now. It's not like, Buck's character remembers getting cut in the forehead. So it's such a unique character.
Well, it's funny because they play it like a TV show, another episode of blah, blah. And it's very much like those old sitcoms where like there was no continuity from episode to episode in those sitcoms. Like no one ever referred to anything else. You never knew what ever happened. They were all standalone. So it kind of fits that mold very well now that you say it.
No, that's a good point, actually, right? You set it up as a situation comedy. So each one is different, a different situation, as it were. What's...
yes, go on.
I'm just trying to think about how Jennifer Warnes is set up for anything that we can tie back to, but she's not. She's a unique, singular voice. Anyway, Jennifer Warnes comes on to sing Right Time of the Night. I was not familiar with this song, although Jennifer Warnes is someone who we probably know from later, like 80s songs, right?
I think she's on like a decade too early, yeah.
Yeah, I think she sang some songs that were in Dirty Dancing. And
the one with Joe Cocker.
Oh, I Had the Time of My Life, Up Where We Belong. Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. She's on the show like a decade too early.
But she comes on and belts out this tune, Right Time of the Night, which I was not familiar with. And my only note really was that there were backup singers behind her that I could see their mouths moving, but for whatever reason, their mic was not on, so I could not hear them at all. How did you feel about this one, Brad?
I have only really one note. This is a song I feel like I should like because it sounded like the band. Like it had that kind of Americana, and I was like, I should like this song. Yeah. But for some reason I don't. Gary, this was number 1 on the adult contemporary charts, by the way.
Really?
Yes.
In 1977?
76, 77, yeah.
Wow.
Around, I think earlier that year, yeah.
John, was this in your wheelhouse?
Well, I think the transition you were looking for before was it feels like the right time of the night to talk about Jennifer Warnes. But
I retire. Good night, everybody.
Obviously,
I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah. See,
obviously, someone's been podcasting more than 40 some weeks. Okay.
But this was good. Like I actually thought this was really nice. I think she has a beautiful voice. I do know her more for Up Where We Belong with the aforementioned Joe Cocker. So I think, that is where I know her from. Of course, I've had the time of my life as well. But yeah, I thought this was very solid. Does it feel like finale music? Or are they at the point in the show yet where they're like, let's get a big name for the finale? Probably not, but
apparently not.
Cute.
I mean, and I don't mean this in a bad way. This has to be somebody's connection. Like somebody wanted her on, whether it was the cast or Buck or who, you know what I mean? Because like you said, John, they're not getting a big name for finale, but this has got to be one of those instances, which we know they did a lot in the first few seasons. Somebody on the show really wanted somebody on, and so they got her in. I'm guessing that's where this came out. Well, I mean, she did have a song. She did have a number 1 song at some point earlier in the year, so it's not like she's a total unknown.
Well, I believe like in the background, Kenny Vance is backing up Jennifer Warnes for this song, and then he's gonna...
Is that who that is?
Yeah, I think he's on the microphone.
Because I noticed the other 2 guys back up Kenny Vance, but that guy's Kenny Vance.
Of course, and then Kenny Vance is going to be a big part of the band in season 6.
Yeah. No, they do. Right. They do credit him in this, so you're right. That's him. Huh. Old Eagle Eye over there.
Yeah. Look at John.
Snipe that.
John, did you recognize all the players in the next sketch? I hope you say yes.
Oh, yeah. I'm a big shower guy.
We get what is widely regarded as a breakout sketch for Bill with the shower mic sketch. So we start out in an empty shower, and then Bill gets in and puts the microphone around his neck and then starts his show in the shower, thanking everyone for being here. The microphone
soap. It's make sure they know it's a soap microphone.
Right.
Soap on a rope.
Soap on a rope that he puts around his neck. And so he starts his show with some songs and introducing everything. And then his wife gets in, Gilda, because she has to get a shower. And he starts talking to her and trying to get her to sing and join him. And after a short time, he invites her lover, whom she's been having an affair with.
Listen, honey, a lot of folks out there want to know if you really love me. Do you, honey?
Would you leave me alone, Richard?
Oh, do you love me with your whole heart and soul? Come on, honey.
Yes, I love you. I love you.
I love you. I know this is corny and old-fashioned, but come on. There's nobody else, is there? You really love, honor, and cherish me,
I love
don't
you.
you?
Now leave me alone. I'm in a hurry.
Well, you know, honey, folks, out there, what my wife doesn't know is that I know she's been cheating on me for the last couple of years, and we've got behind the curtain a surprise guest, the man she's been seeing behind my back for the last 2 years. Here he is, Richard Kolarski. Come on in, Richard. Good to have you aboard. Good to have you.
What are you doing here?
Yes, I brought him all the way from his home in the city to be with us here today. Isn't it terrific?
Something tells me I shouldn't have come to church. Too surprised. But I do love you, come what may.
All right. Now tell me, kids, you kids must spend a lot of time in the shower together when I'm not here.
You bet. No, it's funny. I'll tell you the truth. A lot of people have the wrong idea about that. It's actually a lot safer to rent a hotel room. You know, there's much less chance of meeting an aunt or an uncle, and you don't have to worry about changing the sheets on the bed.
Yes. Ouch! I forgot how much is involved in this kind of thing. Woo! Well, honey, you've been confronted with this thing now. Are you going to break it off with him for the good of your marriage, or are you just going to continue to stick the knife in and twist it, huh?
Yes, Richard, that's exactly what we're going to do.
Wow, that hurts. Okay, you have to excuse me, but I'm an emotional guy, and I really hate to get bad news. I'm sorry, but that's the way I'm built, okay? Gee, I'm afraid that's all the time I've got for today. Thanks, kids, for dropping by.
Before you finish, Richard, I just want to say that we'll be in Philadelphia the first week in June at the Statler Hotel.
Great. Well, I'll be looking for you there, okay? Thanks for stopping by. Richard Harkiman and the guy she's been messing around with.
I mean, this sketch really, this is considered Bill's breakout sketch.
Yeah. This is the one. This is the one where he breaks from his shell, if you will, and we really see Bill Murray. This is the Bill Murray show. This sketch. I mean, the moment he walks on, this is a tailor made for Bill Murray. He's talking to camera, as if he's delivering this nightclub act. It's very Nick the Lounge Singer-esque, but he's kind of emceeing as almost like a Vegas night lounge act kind of guy. And so it's Bill and Buck and Gilda are great, but they're really just there complimenting Bill Murray. Like you can't overstate how much this sketch is all Bill Murray and just takes the reins and the other two hang on.
John, how do you feel about this one?
Well, first, we should really be analyzing the sketch from the shower. So disappointed, guys, that we didn't. But this is honestly one of my favorite sketches of the original era. It's so monumental to establishing Bill Murray with the audience. This is the sketch for me that establishes who he's going to become for decades. We get to see him be a little bit smarmy. And, I think he's going to bring that into his future Nick the Lounge Singer performances. And that's just the tip of the iceberg to me, because I think that Buck Henry and Gilda Radner are also so great in this sketch. It hits on all cylinders. This has to be one of the best sketches of season 2.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know who would have been better than Buck to be in that role, because he came in and he didn't outshine Bill in any way. He totally complimented him in the scene. And
both of
Gilda
them, Buck
did the
and
same.
Gilda.
Yeah, Gilda too.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking, from a male perspective, I didn't know who else could do that.
And he couldn't do that. He couldn't be that good if it wasn't Buck and Gilda being that good. To your point, if John Belushi was the guy who came in the shower, Bill Murray would not shine nearly as well. It's the casting of this, like you said, is perfect. Buck is great. Gilda's great. And they just elevate Bill so much with their performance. Yeah.
And I think even if it was Steve Martin, I don't think this sketch works as well. I think
right.
You need Buck Henry in this. And I do, one of the things that I was watching this back that I thought of was this is something I would encourage the two of you as you're going through these episodes again and going through, especially Bill Murray's growth on the show, is a lot of times after sketches, they will pan out of the sketch and you'll see very small versions through the lens of the audience of the set. And Bill Murray is really the only original cast member that stays in character after sketches are over. And I think he does that for the live audience, and it grows out of a confidence in himself as a performer. It's something that when he's really running the cast in season 5 that I noticed a lot. And I think that all starts here. It's out of the pure confidence of oh, I crushed this. Because just for a slight second at the end of the sketch, when the veneer is dropped of the sketch, I think I could just see that twinkle in his eye that he just had his moment. And to me, this is, I'm so touched that we get to talk about it. Like it makes me giddy.
Well, and we got to give credit to the moment. Like there are about 8 things that can go wrong in this sketch. Like we mentioned it, but I don't know if we harped on it enough. Like they're under a live shower. Like he walks in
Right.
and turns on the shower, and it is a live shower that pours on them the entire sketch. And Bill does some great work. You know, you could easily play this off where you stand back and the water hits you on your chest or your chest. Like there's time Bill gets in and the water hits him smash right in the face. His mouth is filling up. He doesn't miss a beat. You know, Buck comes in fully dressed, as you said, Gary, in a suit. And like, he's just fully committed, getting drenched, which we'll see in the next scene, hasn't fully recovered from the next sketch. But like the sketch itself, so many things happen. To John's point, like they just nailed it. And I think you're right. Like they finish it and Bill's just like, yep, got it. And, but I John, you probably know this, the kind of like the history or where the origin of this sketch came from. You know, we've talked about Bill was having trouble on the show, wasn't finding his footing. And John's wife, Judy, gave Bill a soap on the rope, a microphone soap on the rope. And then maybe John, you know this, I found 2 differing versions of how this came in the Weingrad Hill book. Bill Murray states he got the gift from Judy and had this idea like that Wednesday morning of the week, got the idea and ran to the studio and like wrote this with Gilda like in time for read through that night. That's one version. The other version I found was in the oral history book, which I personally buy a little bit more because I think it was a Christmas gift that she gave this to him. So it would have happened, obviously December. He's had it for a little while, but in that book, Bill says the story that he got this idea and just kind of like threw it out at read through one day. Didn't even have the sketch. Like no one had scripts. He just started doing it and people were laughing. And then he finished the sketch and he didn't have an ending. And he's just like, I don't have an ending. I'm kind of done. And Tom Davis apparently stood up and was like, I'll work on this. I want to help Bill. I want to help him write this. And it's the reason I buy this story a little bit more is I feel like that happened maybe a month in advance, because you can see this is the origins of Nick the Lounge Singer, which Davis did help and Paul Schaefer got involved. And I could see this being the origin of that. Then they start taking that kernel, building. And we actually get Nick the Lounge Singer first a few weeks ago when Elliot Gould hosted. And the reason we ended up getting this sketch this week is because it's season finale. And what sketches do we have in our back pocket? And they're like, hey, remember how you created Nick the Lounge Singer? Just some guy singing in the shower? Let's throw that on because we got Buck. So I don't know. They're the 2 versions I've heard of how this particular sketch came about.
Yeah, the timeline's interesting though with the Christmas present, because I know that like Belushi obviously knew Bill Murray from beforehand, but like is Judy Belushi getting Bill a Christmas gift before he's a cast member on the show? That's something that like I'm curious about the timeline there, but I do believe that the gift thing actually did happen, and yeah, it's certainly possible that Tom Davis worked on this, considering that Tom is going to work with Bill like very, very closely for years to come. So I usually the answer between the question of like which story is right is that it's usually a little bit of both.
Yeah.
It's great though. I think it's an amazing sketch. Yeah. Well, another sketch that is seminal through these years is the Coneheads. And this time we get the return of the Coneheads. So the sketch opens on an empty living room and we hear the doorbell ring. And Jane crosses the living room to answer the door, and it's Buck.
Thank God. They worked in a way to allow the audience to clap for 20 seconds.
Right. And something to still happen. Last time we saw the Coneheads, they had to freeze on the stairs as they were walking down. So Buck's at the door with this giant piece of metal that scientists found in Arizona, and they couldn't determine what it was. And then after weeks of research, someone turned it around and noticed that it was addressed to Beldar. It is a message. I thought that was really funny.
With his full address.
Yeah. It's a message that they are going home.
You know, I've bicycled through France 27 times, and I've never heard of Remulac. Parlez-vous français?
Oui, nous parlons français. Salut, André.
Nous vous invitons d'assimiler des quantités grosses.
That's a pretty good accent, Bildar, but I don't think you come from France. I don't think you come from anywhere near France. I think I know exactly what you people are. You're Ku Klux Klan.
Incorrect. There is no need to deceive the human any longer. I am Beldar, the first timekeeper from the planet Remulac. Our star cruiser arrived here 15 years ago. We had instructions to seize your miserable world.
Yes, and all was well until you crashed the Star Cruiser into Lake Michigan.
Let us not get into that again.
You mean it's true? There is life on other planets. Flying saucers do exist. You have so much to teach us. Intergalactic travel is possible. I'd love to experience the sensation of flying through space at unthinkable speeds.
No problem. We must leave at once for the planet Remulac. Gather gifts for the High Master.
But, Daddy, what manner of conveyance will transport us?
We must drive to the island of Manhattan. There, we find the Chrysler Building. It is the site of the emergency return vehicle which will carry us off the Earth.
Ikvat, Klathab, Remulac.
And then we get a pre-taped driving sequence of them leaving a house in New Jersey and getting in their car. They get gas, they pay tolls, and they go through the tunnel, and they make their way to the Chrysler Building, which is a wonderful piece of prop work. And then which we see launch into the air and into space. And then we're in Remulac. So we see Remulac. We see where Jon is the High Master sitting in a barbershop chair that Garrett is trying to work and turn in the right way. And as Dan, Jane, and Lorraine come on set, the High Master tells them that due to a drop in their currency, the space program has been cut, and therefore the Earth project is over. But luckily, the High Master, has been paired with Beldar's daughter. But when he finds out that her cone has been honed, he calls her some sort of name. And then Jon and Dan start this fight sequence that doesn't last very long, considering the rest of the sketch was much longer. And then it leads to the two of them jumping out of the window. And that pretty much wraps up the sketch, which I think I summarized in a much faster way, again, than another sketch.
To be fair, Gary, there was a lot to cover.
Yes, there was. Jon, how did you feel about this Conehead?
I love this. I mean, I know I'm like, I wish I could say I didn't, because I've been loving everything in this episode so far. But truly, I mean,
it's a good sketch.
It's a great sketch, and it's one of the best. It could be the seminal Coneheads sketch as well. Like, it's one of the better ones that we see. The fact that they go from like set to pre-tape to set here is like a really advanced group of advanced production for 1977. And I do feel like the fact that they took this to the next level of actually going back to their home planet, I think is a great piece of continuity. You get Garrett, you got to see him again. So you know that there's like a connection from the previous sketch to this one. And I do believe that, getting Belushi and Aykroyd both in the Conehead gear is pretty great. Also makes sense, with the production value of like, you have to do the sketch with Bill Murray and Gilda Radner before this one so that everybody who needs the time to get into the Conehead gear was able to do it. But I think there's so much here to enjoy, including Buck's part. The pre-tape itself, between Dan Aykroyd like sucking on the gas tank or the gas nozzle, which gave me a huge laugh, to the just imagining being in the city and seeing them in the Coneheads like driving around.
The reactions are great when they pull up to the Chrysler Building and people are just staring at them getting out of the car. They're convertible. Do we say it's a convertible? Which again, that's something. The thing that came to mind, you just can't do that today. I can't imagine filming and doing a scene where you're going to film camera in the back of a convertible. No one, everything open, loose, just driving through the city randomly. Like, it's such a great 1970s thing to do. It's so awesome. And everybody's reactions are priceless. Yeah,
it's an amazing sketch, and just like another slam dunk for this episode.
It was a lot of fun, and it was really well coordinated. Like you said, Jon, going from live to pre-taped back to live. It was great.
Yeah. Could I also just point out that I think Lorraine Newman is especially good in this sketch. I think like her reactions with Belushi when she goes up to the planet about like, oh, I'm going to take you as my wife. And it's like, oh no, you've already been sullied and like all that stuff. Like, I do think that, Aykroyd is fantastic and Jane is really great as well. But I do think Lorraine doesn't get enough credit for like being a very good Conehead.
And Jane, like there's that bit where Jane starts going and does her rant. You're like, I was like, God damn, Jane, like so good. She pulls off that dialogue like unbelievably well. And I guess this was at this point too, I think they were trying to end the Coneheads. This is still the era where Lauren, at least publicly, was like fighting with having reoccurring characters or being original and what to lean on and what not to lean on. So the whole idea of like them going back to Remulac was kind of like, I think the original idea was like a closing of the book. Like, we've done our Coneheads story and then we're done. Because I think going into season 3, they weren't initially planning on bringing them back. So that's kind of why they sent them back. And so you give it this big production value of, okay, we've done this Coneheads. Because the last one they did before this was Elliot Gould, where we had complained, Gary, they hadn't really advanced. They haven't been taking the, they haven't done anything new. And then this was the exact opposite. They did something completely new. They set it up. They bring them back. You see Remulac. There's all this fun stuff they add that just makes it such a great sketch to watch.
That's very surprising to me because I have to imagine like this is like the number one SNL costume at the time. Like as the show is getting bigger, people are like must be talking about the Coneheads maybe more than any other character in the history of the show so far. So it's I understand that maybe that was like Lauren's initial thought process, but I can also very much understand why they changed their minds pretty.
Why they quickly changed their mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was around this time in the episode 2, it finally hit me. I'm like, all right, season finale. This is like a greatest hits album. Like they're breaking out, we got Carter, we got Coneheads, like, we're going to get Emily Litella. We got Samurai. It's like, just like a greatest hits album, all the best, but a couple new ones here and there where some are good and some are, so-so, but it's like, this is where it really started to feel like the greatest hits for me after this sketch.
Yeah. We're riding high as a show, going back to all of these favorites. And then we go back to Weekend Update, which I was surprised because that's a quick turnaround for Jane going from
I had that
Conehead
same
to
thought. Yeah.
Weekend Update. So we have Weekend Update with Jane. She does some Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra and Patty Hearst joke, a Frost Nixon joke. We get a Preakness joke with some audio from the jockey. Who was that? It was Tom Davis and Chevy Chase?
I think it was all Chevy.
It was all Chevy. Okay. So we get Chevy's voiceover in this. Get some Baryshnikov and Jackie O joke, which I thought was funny, and then a Lindbergh joke. And then we get Emily Litella back. Like you said, Brad, greatest hits. It's the season finale. God forbid we go without Emily Litella on Weekend Update. But this time she's not at the desk. She is with what's this woman's name? Stella?
Her name is Bella.
Yeah.
This is literally the whole bit.
I know.
Is what is her name?
Yeah, that was this bit, Brad. Never mind.
No, it's Bella. Oh, you speak Italian.
Which I thought was very funny.
How nice. Ciao, ciao.
Yeah.
It was good. It was fun.
I liked it because it was different. She wasn't at the desk being berated by Jane and didn't call Jane a bitch, and it was something different and fun.
I like the ending. The whole bit, she's interviewing her, and then she basically ruins her interview by messing up her name. She's like, because Bella was going to have this big announcement, and she's like, "What was your announcement?" And then Bella just looks, "Never mind." It was good. It was a good turn.
John, how are you feeling about Emily Little at this time of the show's life?
I think I was okay with it. I really didn't mind the constant Emily Litellas. I think it was to me, I thought it was always cute. And I do think the change from doing these with Chevy to doing these with Jane really gave the character a little bit of new life. So I didn't mind it as much. But this is truly like one of the last Emily Litellas. I think they're going to really give us, trickle in a couple in the next couple seasons, but it's we're not
because we got somebody new in the wings coming up. Get ready for that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. And but yeah, I think that to me, this works really well because it is a remote piece as opposed to at the update desk, and you get something different.
The different part of it really helps it out.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we also couldn't have Emily Little at the desk because we come back to Buck at the desk, and he is there to make a presentation to Jane as an outstanding journalist. And when she asks who else has gotten the award, he's like, well, no one else yet. And he tells her that it's because of her beautiful hair, and he's been thinking about her legs under the desk, and he wants to give her a trophy if she comes back with him after the show. And she declines.
Horny Buck is back.
Horny Buck is back.
Maybe a little bit of cottage cheese.
That would have been good, actually, if he brought that up somehow.
That would have been funny. And then she turns him down, and he walks away and takes his plaque back. And she just looks totally creeped out when he leaves. That was Buck's time on Weekend Update this week, Brad.
I kind of I was excited to see Buck. And before they got into the joke part of his bit, I actually liked this. I thought it was a really fun way to tie it up because the whole season, Jane is always talking about how she took over the mantle and it's hard-hitting journalism and they're, need to have credibility. I thought it was actually this was like a long season payoff they were actually legitimately going to do until Buck took that turn on the sexual side. But I was like, oh, this is funny. They're actually, giving Jane her due at the end of the season.
John, how'd you feel about this horny buck?
I thought it was good. I mean, it's not as good as what we get in season 1 with him coming on his first episode where he does the Zuckerman piece. But I do think this is again, it's kind of cute. But yeah, I mean, it's a good piece. It's one where I wish they kept it as a runner, because I think that would have made this much better for me if they really referred to the fact that he was, if he came out during Weekend Update and said, Lauren's letting me do anything tonight. So Jane, I'm presenting this award to you and you better come home with me. I think that clicks for me. But the fact that they wrote it as a separate piece doesn't work as well.
I totally agree with you. Yeah, I like that idea more than I think I liked what was actually done. So, well, that was the end of a pretty fast Weekend Update, really, all told. I thought it was pretty quick. And that takes us to Rhonda's engagement party, where Jane sets everything up, telling her that she and Lorraine are her best friends, and they're so excited to throw this party. And Jane is going to make a bouquet from all of the ribbons on her gifts, and Lorraine is going to write down everything she says so she can say it on her wedding night. She opens a bunch of gifts like a melon baller, an egg tweezer, and an apron. At the end, Jane gives her the bouquet made of ribbons, and Lorraine says that what she's going to say on her wedding night is, "Thank you. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure I'll like it," which is how she accepted every gift before she opened it. Brad, how'd you feel about Rhonda's engagement party?
I didn't love this one. This was probably the one sketch of the night I didn't love. And it's not bad. There's not a lot here. It's kind of the same joke over and over again. Yeah, she gets the gift. Oh, I don't know what it is, but I'm sure I'll love it. And she does that 3 or 4 times. And I like the Rhonda character, but I feel like it plays better when it's in smaller doses or just maybe a little side character. We saw her the first time with her and Jane, just the two of them, and that worked well. But this centerpiece of an ensemble didn't necessarily work for me. I didn't, I think this is Marilyn Suzanne Miller. She wrote a lot of these Rhonda pieces with her, and you can kind of feel it has that, we use it all the time with her, that slice of life. It's not a lot of laugh out loud comedy, but it felt a little bit more grounded in reality than other sketches, but just didn't hit. I don't know. Again, not bad. Just I didn't connect on it for whatever reason.
John, did it hit for you?
I was a little meh on it. I mean, it's a lot of Jewish woman, Jewish mother humor, which I get. And I could see the Linda Richman, the Mike Myers character in her stuff, especially when she was getting verklempt. So I think there was some cute things for me here, but I could totally understand why this would not play for most people. I do think Jane's character, which I believe this is a character she's done before, but Jane does a voice here that's much different. And I think it is her Enid Loopner voice that she's going to later do for the Nerds.
It sounds like that. It also sounded like if you remember the very first time she did a guest spot on Update with Chevy and she did an editorial, it reminded me of that voice where she was the woman talking about the bicentennial or whatever.
It's a little nasally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But this was okay.
Gary?
I'm in the same boat. I think it was just okay. It was nothing special. I didn't love it. Didn't totally hate it though either. So it was fine.
Yeah, this is a very good episode. Again, it's not a bad sketch. It just wasn't. We've been seeing so much good stuff this episode, I think, that you're just kind of oh, okay.
And I felt like the good stuff kept coming with the next sketch, which was the show How Your Children Grow, which was hosted by Jane. And she's interviewing Dr. Richard Dalton, played by Buck, who is with Gilda and Lorraine. And as Buck speaks, Gilda speaks the punctuation between the words that he's saying. And after every sentence that he completes, Lorraine rings a bell and then looks to her right. And Gilda then gives Jane a cookie every time.
Good evening and welcome to How Your Children Grow. My guest tonight is one of America's foremost behavioral scientists who's here to discuss his research on problems in learning difficulties. His name is Dr. Richard Dalton. Welcome.
Thank you.
Comma,
Jane.
period,
It's very nice to be here.
exclamation point.
Thank you. Dr. Dalton, when did you first become involved with your work with the handicapped?
About 12,
Dash.
13 years ago.
Period.
I was fresh out of college.
Parentheses.
I went to Harvard,
Close parentheses.
where I got a PhD
Period.
in speech therapy.
Period.
Thank you. Why did you choose this field, sir?
Why?
Question mark.
I guess because it's so
Dot, dot, dot.
damned rewarding.
Period.
Years ago, Jane,
Dash.
my father told me that
Quotation mark.
if I could just help one person in the world,
Comma.
then surely I would be looked upon favorably by the Lord.
Exclamation point. Close quotation.
Thank you. Your father sounds like a wise man. Is he still alive?
No, Jane.
Dot, dot, dot.
He had a tumor.
Dash.
The doctors removed half his colon
Semicolon.
before he lapsed into a coma
Comma.
and then died.
Period.
And the whole idea is that he's trying to disprove Pavlov's theory about the dog wanting a treat when the bell rings. And then Lorraine rings the bell and Gilda does not give her a cookie. And we get Jane just totally salivating all over herself and wanting a cookie. And what got me was that Jane was the one getting the laugh here because the camera goes right to Jane and then there's, saliva all over her mouth. I really enjoyed this sketch for what it was. I thought the wordplay between Buck and Gilda was brilliant. They were both on point the whole time. John, how'd you feel about this one?
I love this sketch. It's a sleeper sketch, I would say, in season 2. It's one that people don't talk about very much, but if you're going to recommend like one to hook some people in on the show, I think it's a great sketch. It's fast paced and has a great twist at the end, which, like you might see coming if you know the Pavlov dog stuff. Like obviously a lot of people learn about that, but I do think it's great, but also to your point, Gary, it's the casting in this sketch is really good. Like you don't typically make Jane the butt of the sketch, and here she is in that role, and she does it really well. And it's something that I wish they would lean into more in the early years of SNL, is give her that opportunity. But yeah, I just think that everything went right here, and this is like great back half material for the show. Like fantastic.
Brad, what'd you think?
I don't think I liked it as much as the two of you guys, and I again don't mean it in a bad way. I thought it was okay. I enjoyed it. My thought was, okay, this is our out of left field sketch of the night, but I liked it. Like it worked. Like this, Gary makes fun. I complain a lot of times, like, oh, if this sketch was on a different episode or this or whatever, this is a perfect sketch for this episode because everything's been very broad, kind of hitting on all levels. And that's what made this feel so good because this is a completely out of left field sketch. It's so bizarre and funky and it just fits. It's just a great change of pace. And I liked that more than actually say maybe the sketch itself is what the sketch was in the feel of it all. It's really, it's just so bizarre, but it's really funny. This is kind of it's a repeat sort of how your children grow is the sketch she did when she had Bill, right? When Bill was doing the,
when he could say the 5 words. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like that they kind of revisited that and it's just so bizarre. Like,
so then I wonder if this is Ann Beats then, because I think Ann Beats wrote that first one.
She did. Yeah, that was hers.
Yeah. So this could
sense.
be also
that could be
Ann here. And then, yeah, I mean, Brad, I would say like, I know you didn't love this as much, but this could be the best sketch on some episodes in season 2.
Yes.
Oh, it could be. Yeah, it could be. But I just feel like this is an instance, and I feel like they start to go away from stuff like this as the seasons go on, where like this is just an out of left field sketch. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. But because of that, it's so funny.
It was just brilliant between Gilda and Buck too, because they had one really small flub in there, but otherwise it was perfect.
And John's point about Jane is a good one too. Like he actually got to see Jane be the butt of the joke and get the laughs, which I didn't think about at the time, but yeah, you don't see it enough. And that was really fun to see.
Yeah. Well, that sketch then leads into Garrett on home base, and he introduces a home movie by Bill Wegman, which is just a straight shot of a dog sleeping with an alarm clock. I wasn't sure if it was on the dog. I couldn't really tell. It looked like it was on the dog. And then the alarm clock goes off, and then it's just the dog's reaction, which is, I thought, very understated for what I was expecting.
My note was that dog's going to be pissed when the alarm goes off because it's one of the old, it's like tick, 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 tick. And you're just waiting for that dog to lose its shit. But no, it didn't.
I think what's notable about this one, I think this is the last home movie we get in the original era of the show.
Mm.
I mean, you're going to get Mr. Bills, but like this is the actual last like home movie.
Yeah. It was funny. It was funny and short. Or it served its purpose.
I think that's exactly what you wanted from home movies too, right? It was just like real quick to the point, little something different. And then we're back to Buck on stage, and he introduces Kenny Vance, who I don't know the name of the song that Kenny Vance sings. I'm sorry.
It's called The Performer, Gary.
Thank you. Thank you for doing your homework, Brad. So why don't you tell us more about Kenny Vance?
I know he went on to be he was the musical director in season 6, right? When the changeover happened, he had something to do with Steely Dan back in the day. If somehow, I mean, I don't like Steely Dan either, so I didn't really dig much deeper other than like the one sentence I read about it. Allegedly, the music supervisor on Animal House. But about this song, I got nothing about this song. I mean, what was this? What is this? Is this Calypso? What kind of music is this? First of all, someone answer that question.
This was okay. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just find like the song is less interesting than the context of Kenny Vance just being in the show, like here, and then later on being the music director. I mean, obviously, Hal Wilner is going to have that job for many, many decades, and I believe like he at the time was responsible for booking musical guests during season 6, which he got some huge names on the show, including Prince and James Brown. So, just his place in SNL history is very fascinating to me more than this particular performance.
Yeah, let's bring it back to this piece of shit performance, which it was. I mean, the guitar player doesn't even know what he's... First of all, there's 2 acoustic guitar players, Kenny Vance and some other dude. And they cut to that other guy. He's sitting on the stool. He has this look on his face like, are we really playing this on live TV? Like, this is what we're doing now? And they cut to him like twice. You could tell even Dave Wilson was worried because he tries to cut to Alan Rubin to make you think you're going to like this a little bit better if they start showing the house band. This one was rough. I'm sorry.
Why are you apologizing? You never apologized before for being rough on a musical guest. So why start now? Oh, well.
Kenny Vance is very upset with you right now.
I was apologizing to Thomas Senna because he's probably listening and like looking at his autographed album that Kenny Vance gave him. And he's like, oh, man.
Is Thomas Senna a Kenny Vance guy?
Probably.
Anyone that Brad doesn't like, he assumes Thomas does. Well, we're back to the sketches, thankfully. And this time, this is a Lucky Lindy sketch. It starts out with voiceover by Dan and footage of Charles Lindbergh. Again, we've heard about him in Weekend Update earlier. So this time it's talking about the 33-hour flight that Lindbergh had from New Jersey to France. And this time Lindbergh is played by Buck. And it's just a back and forth between Buck in the cockpit and Dan's VO talking about everything he did to fill his time for those 33 hours by himself in the cockpit. A lot of times his voiceover is wondering about how perilously close to the Atlantic Ocean, which then resulted in him opening the window and getting a face full of water. A lot of water in the Tonight Show. Water gas.
It's true.
It's a lot of different just jokes back and forth until eventually he opens the window and he then is talking to the land shark.
Wake up! You're perilously close to the inky deeps of the icy Atlantic.
I wonder if I am perilously close to the inky deeps of the icy Atlantic.
Out there in the dark, the plucky young American flyer found comfort in thoughts of the Almighty.
God, I'm tired.
Yet once again the lone eagle swooped perilously close to the inky deeps of the icy Atlantic.
I wonder if once again I am perilously close to the inky deeps of the icy Atlantic.
Monsieur Lindbergh,
Huh? What?
Captain Lindbergh, Berg.
Who's that? I didn't know order any candy?
Exterminator.
I don't need an exterminator. I'm flying solo to Paris.
Maps. Paris maps.
I've got a map.
Compass.
And I've got a compass. Now leave me alone.
Amphetamines.
Well, okay, I guess we could chat for a while.
Could you slow down a bit? I can't keep up.
Are you swimming?
I'm running.
You're running?
Yes, sir. I'm running.
What? You mean I'm on land finally? I've made it to Paris? I've gone all the way to France?
Oui, monsieur.
I don't know. I thought this was fun. I thought the setup was fun, and the back and forth between Dan's voiceover and Buck's play on screen was fun. John, how did you feel?
Yeah, I was gonna say I was really enjoying podcasting with you guys, and then Kenny Vance's performance jerked us off course.
Question.
Wow.
I have a question. Did you have that in your back pocket, or did you just think of it?
Sometimes these things just come to.
Oh, that's
funny.
brilliant.
That was pretty damn good.
That was wonderful.
I do. Thank you. I did also really enjoy the sketch. Like this was a good sketch. Again, like one of those that I think like Buck's gonna do better than anyone else. The whole like peeing in the thermos, the the narration, the desperation, the talking to his hand. I just think like, you know, it's just, it goes back to what I originally told you guys when we first got together for Buck Henry, which is like, he looks like the most normal, ordinary guy in the world. And he's like a secret sicko. And it just gets like more and more crazy. And I do think that for all the moments of like, you know, back and forth of like, okay, Chevy's going to leave the show. It's a big deal. How's the show going to recover? And then we're like on shaky waters for a long time. Then he's sort of like dropping in and out. I actually think this is a great cameo appearance by Chevy here. Like this is the right time to do it. It's totally unexpected. Yep. And like, yes, you may have heard his voice during the weekend update, but I think that's really only for like eared listeners. So I believe that this is a monumental moment as well when we get the land shark and it's able to say like, okay, we're actually going to close the book properly on Chevy here at the end of season 2.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the show and the season, and you know, remember Chevy started the season, it actually worked. I thought it was a nice close the book on the season, having Chevy back unannounced. It was a great cameo. I agree. The back and forth's great. I think that the turbulence line that John referenced, where they're talking about there's turbulence, suddenly jerk the plane off course. Yeah. I think they had a lot of issues with the sensors on that one. Like they had a legit fight to get that line on. But the land shark comes on. It's funny, you know, he maps. Paris maps. Yeah. I have my maps. Compass. And then when he talks about he's running, we've hit Paris. Oui, monsieur. Like, yeah, it's just very funny. It was good. It was a great cameo for Chevy.
It was a good last live sketch, really, for the season. There is one more, but we'll get there. But first, we go to the song "Departure Lounge" by the band.
I'm interested.
So
not
this
the
is
band.
No, not the band. The house band. Sorry. But I thought it was a great way to end the season because everyone got their little piece, their time on camera for the most part in the band. How'd you feel about it, Brad? You look a little iffy.
No, I mean, I thought it was an odd choice to what you just said. Aside from giving your band a thank you and a spotlight in the finale, it just felt a little bit odd to be in there. But, you know, I'm sure Howard Shore had something he wanted to do. And I mean, he's done a great job all season with the band and band in sketches and stuff. So, I mean, I love the band. I just wish I would have liked this song a little bit better. Probably because it was a musical number and I just didn't get into it as much as I should have. But I feel like I'm in the minority of not being a big fan of this.
John, are you in the minority or majority?
More majority. I mean, I actually like this, and I do think that this is like a really good precursor to what we get nowadays with, you know, in between commercial breaks. Sometimes towards the end of the show, we'll get we'll get like shots of the band like playing for the studio audience, and I enjoy that. I do appreciate the fact that like how talented the band that came together was. Like, think about just like
the show. They're so good.
like this like little show that could like put all these like amazing performers together that would go on to be like legendary performers for generations, and like just to get to see them like all be together and perform like this at the end of the season. I think it's a nice, like thanks to the band for the season to get them to do something like this. But regardless, I actually did like this probably more than Jennifer Warnes and Kenny Vance, honestly.
100% better than Kenny Vance, hands down. The Jennifer Warnes song wasn't bad. It wasn't true, but yeah, I would definitely take this over Kenny Vance.
Well, Buck comes back on stage to introduce the unique and extraordinary impressionist, Michael O'Donoghue. His words, not mine. I should just clarify. Those were Buck Henry's words.
Buck must love O'Donoghue.
Definitely. O'Donoghue comes out in this very 70s ruffled tuxedo shirt and this very impressive jacket, and he talks about how much he loves the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. He really enjoys them, and the lights come on, and now there's a choir behind him, and they are all going to do their impression of having 18-inch needles stuck in their eyes. And we get this impression for the last time this season. I guess the last time ever, right? I don't
This
think
is
we'll
it.
see this again.
Yeah, this is it.
How was it this time, Brad?
I liked it. For this show, for this host, I take this callback. And I like it. He's done this, Michael O'Donoghue impressionist 3 times. All 3 times, Buck has been the host. I appreciated that. And something about this being the last sketch of season 2, I bought into. And it kind of deviates from the Mr. Mike, I think, a bit, of him doing the impression, because he's really the only one really selling the needles in the eyes and screaming. Everybody, he's got the whole cast and half the writers up there kind of falling over each other. So I could see how people don't like it, because it just gets, it's first of all, a lot of people probably don't like the bit itself, but if you start incorporating the cast and making it that much bigger, it gives you reason to not like it. But I liked it. I thought it was, for whatever reason, I thought this was a really great way to end the show in the season.
John, how about you?
I like the escalation of this compared to the others. The fact that we're going to put them in choir form and get this done. I don't like the bit to begin with, and I never really have. I'm very hit or miss with O'Donoghue as far as like where the danger humor works for me. And I don't think the steel needles in the eyes works when he's like the only one just like screaming on the floor. But this one I don't mind as much. I don't know why they always have to happen in Buck Henry episodes. It's like,
that's what I'm saying. I think Buck must really love O'Donoghue and this gag.
He must. But that's our show. That's the season finale of season 2. Overall, really strong episode. John, what are your thoughts on the overall episode?
I think this is a great episode. Honestly, one of the best episodes of the original era, I believe. It's it is like I said, a landmark episode in terms of turning the page on the show. And one for me that I think, season 2, and I can't wait to get your thoughts on it, and whether it's today's podcast or your wrap-up podcast. But to me, season 2, like I think conventionally, most people feel that the original era gets better to season 3, which is the peak of all of it, and then sort of goes back down season 4 and season 5. And I do believe that season 2 is on very murky ground. Like I think that outside the show, people aren't sure if the show is even going to work without Chevy Chase. Bill Murray is a replacement that people don't know how is exactly going to fit. And it just is just like, treading water. And I think it really takes this episode to boost the show back to where it needs to get to over the summer. So to me, I think this is a fantastic episode, not only in season 2, but in the context of the history of the show.
Yeah, I agree. One of my notes I had here, I said, this is a very, very important episode for the show in general. I like season 2 a lot. I've enjoyed season 2 a lot. I feel like it, I think as to your question, John, is like, is season 2 on ground with 3, or how does it compare? I think it depends on what people want or what you expect from the show and from comedy. Because I think this is the last time we see the show take risks, and not necessarily in this episode, and that's why I think I'll get to it, why I think this is an important episode. But season 2 had a lot of risks, whether it was with the host, whether it was with sketches, whether it was with, runners, what they did. And I think this episode is hugely important for 2 things. One, we mentioned it, Bill Murray. This Bill breaks out. Bill knows what he can do, and he's going to carry that through. So that's huge. But 2, the show had a great episode, which they desperately needed after the last 2 weeks. They needed a great episode to go out on, and putting this show together and have it being so good, they realized what worked. They realized it was the more broad humor, the more appealing to the masses, not so much the O'Donoghue, which, starting in season 3, O'Donoghue's, influence on the show starts to go away and Franken and Davis starts to rise. So, they take that turn. I think a lot of it comes from this episode where they spent a good part of the second half of the season trying things out, seeing how weird they could be. And at the end of the day, this is the kind of episode that really clicks.
Well, John, every week we talk about our best bits from each episode. So what are your best bits?
Ooh, this is tough. There's a lot of good stuff in this episode. I think if I had to narrow it down to the best of the best here, I think you got to go with Shower Mike as the number one moment of the episode. That's the one that if you're going to pull something out of this episode to put in a best of, you got to do it there. I think the Coneheads sketch is probably my number 2. And if I'm going to pick a third, I think it has to be the How Your Children Grow sketch, just as that sleeper, really good sketch. If I'm showing somebody some original era or like how the show used to look stuff, those 3 sketches, some of the best you're going to get to show people. So I think we got some great options here.
Absolutely. Brad, what are your best bits?
I went less is more. And I only had Shower Mike, I think. And it's not that I didn't like the other stuff. I think it was, everything was so good. I only wanted to pick one thing. I had Shower Mike. And I kind of thought at one point, I was like, maybe Mormon Tabernacle Choir, but I realized that was more just my nostalgia of that, going back to season 1. So I wouldn't pull that. So yeah, Shower Mike is my one.
I agree with both of you. I think Shower Mike was my favorite. I think my next favorite was the How Your Children Grow. I really liked the wordplay between Gilda and Buck and just how well they did, and Lorraine's, expressionless face the entire time, and Jane getting the laugh. So I think those were my top 2. I really enjoyed the Lucky Lindy sketch too. Like that would have been the one that I would throw in to say we should recognize it. But it was a really difficult show to pick favorites from, I think. Because
it's so good. Yeah. I mean, it's such a good episode. Yeah.
It really is.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
We didn't mention it. So they do the good nights and Butt comes out, says good night to everybody. And Chevy's there in the land shark. How pissed off is the cast that Chevy's on stage for that? Do you think? Or do you think they're happy? Or do you think they're happy?
I think they're happy. I think they're like, we're still in the point right now where it's like, this is our old friend Chevy. And I really think like, I cannot wait to hear you guys talk about what it's going to be like the first time Chevy hosts the show. That is a fascinating week.
I can't wait.
But we're not there yet where all the tension has boiled up. Right now, it's like, hey, you were still a part of this. I don't know.
Season. I think there's some tension because Chevy just had his special, and there've been some stories where he was at NBC these 2 weeks, kind of like walking around like, the big man on campus and talking about his special. I think it was Al Franken had the line where he finally shot back to me. He goes, "Yeah, it was great, Chevy. We do it every week," or something of that nature about just like him gloating about how great his special was. I think there still was. I mean, remember, he did not leave on good terms.
Yeah, that's for sure. I just think like maybe I have rose-colored glasses towards it because I just know how bad it's going to get. But and like for what it's worth, on screen during the goodnights, they all look very excited to have him there. So it's hard to tell.
I agree with John on this because, and I think part of it for me is because we know he was there for the last 2 weeks. And so there may have been some tension in some ways, but I think overall, the feeling I got was that it was more joy than anything else. I think everyone felt good about that show. I think they all felt good about what they just did for the last 90 minutes. And he was a small part of that. And he wasn't like up in front as himself either. Like, I think the fact that he was in the land shark may have helped a little bit.
And they're probably just overjoyed that, season's over.
Season's over. Don Pardo mentions they come back September 24th. So they have 4 months off now to like decompress and get away from it. And they probably all feel really good about that. So a lot of emotions, I'm sure, on stage that night, good and bad.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, John, thank you once again for doing this with us. It's always a pleasure.
Yes.
It's always a blast to get your take. Thank you for being our Buck Henry correspondent. It's wonderful to have you.
Thank you so much for having me again. This is honestly, it's a real honor to get to close out the season with you guys. I just think like we're going to have so much fun over the next 6 times we do this together, because I still think every episode is a tentpole moment for the original era of the show. The next time we get together for a Buck Henry episode is going to be one of the most interesting episodes you will cover throughout the original era. So to me, there's a lot of fun that we still have left on the table. So I'm very appreciative of both of you to have me back, and yeah.
And we'll reach out to you after we turn off to get your sizes so we can measure you for your 5-timers jacket for next time.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I was also going to say, I assume that when I come back for season 3, we're going to have a much bigger budget. So
yeah, you keep assuming over there. Saturday Night Network. Yep, you keep assuming that.
Jon, tell our listeners about the Saturday Night Network and where they can find you and your team.
Absolutely. Well, if you're looking for some modern day coverage of the episodes that are going on right now during season 49, head on over to the Saturday Night Network, where we have 3 episodes a week covering every new episode of Saturday Night Live, including the Hot Take Show right after the episode airs. We're live at 1:10 a.m. So you can join a very fun panel that's breaking down the show, giving their hottest takes on the newest sketches. And of course, join the live chat where we're all breaking down the episode together. Monday nights, we have a roundtable where we really dive deep into the sketches that we want to cover even more. And then Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern, we have our By the Numbers show, where our stats guru, Mike Murray, goes through all the screen time from the week and talks about the best statistics. So if you like looking at the show like live sports, that is the show for you. We'll also have some fun interviews coming out as well. And we just did a great preview for SNL 50, believe it or not. This is going to be coming out next year. So we do plenty of fun content over at the SNL, the Saturday Night Network. And you can also find us at the SNL Network on all social platforms, and find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Search the Saturday Night Network.
Awesome.
Gary, did you see that?
What's that?
He didn't miss a beat.
Not
That's
one.
like some
I know.
Dan Aykroyd shit right there.
Amazing.
I was like, we should be taking notes.
Was that my decibet or decabet?
Yes. Amazing.
You got to do our plugs for us from now on. Jesus, that was impressive.
Thank you.
This is brilliant. Thank you, Jon.
Yeah.
It's always fun to have you.
Thank you very much. Very, very much.
Pleasure
yes.
to talk to you about this stuff. Next week, we are talking about season 2.
Next week?
Our
Wait,
season 2
what?
Wreck Pup show. Yeah.
Oh, right. Shit.
Yeah. We've got work to do, man.
I got to read my contract. Okay.
Until then, good night and have a pleasant
Good
tomorrow.
night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
The Not Ready for Primetime podcast is a 2 Pints Productions production. Produced and edited by Brad and Gary. Thought about by Brad and Gary. Please rate and review. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.